Hello, thanks for joining us again today. I hope you're finding success installing Fibo. Today we're going to do a different scenario where we're going to actually glue up Fibo over tile. As you can see, I've got my tile rig set up here. We're going to go over the additional things that you're going to need. There's some steps that are a little bit different than what you're used to. If you have not watched the full 1 hour video that goes through the basic training, please watch that first before you watch this video, because all of the fundamentals that we learned early on, we're going to use those and apply those when we go to install over tile. So as many of you already know, Fibo can go up over various different substrates. In the original video, we went up over drywall and we went up over horizontal OSB strips. Why do we want to install over tile? Well, there could be several reasons for that. Maybe the customer doesn't want to spend a lot of money. They're looking for a quick fix. Maybe they're going to flip the house, something like that. Maybe there's asbestos in the walls and abatement costs would be very cost prohibitive. So for that reason, we've developed a method to where you can actually go over existing tile with Fibo and have a 100% waterproof installation, just as with any other installation method. So what you're going to need in order to install Fibo over tile are a few different things. What I do not have shown here is you're going to need acetone or lacquer thinner as a cleaner to prep your tile. We're going to talk about prepping the tile in just a little bit. But as far as the items that you're going to need, we need a bonding primer, something that's going to stick to tile. I've chosen the Custom Blends product. It's blue. It's pretty thick. It dries in about 30 minutes, and this seems to work great for me. Your choice as to what primer that you want to use. This one works, so this is the one I stick with. An applicator so that you can roll your primer onto the tile. We're still going to be using these shims. The plastic ones are the ones that we're going to want to use this time, and I'm using a 1/8 of an inch and a 1/16 of an inch for the horseshoe shims in places where I need to do any shimming. You're going to want anchors. These little plastic anchors that come, they're number 4 to number 6. I haven't been able to find them in an individual pack for just the anchors themselves, so I had to buy them with screws. These screws are round head. I don't want to use round head to install any of my Fibo profiles, so I'm going to use a number 6 by 1 inch flathead screw in those anchors. And then for that, you're also going to need a masonry bit, 3/16 of an inch, to go with this yellow anchor. Basically get the bit which matches the anchor that you're going to use. And then you want to have a couple of metal bits, because we're going to want to pre-drill our base profile and our corner profile so that we can mark holes for placing anchors later. So you want one for the size of the diameter of the hole that you want, and then you want one slightly larger so you can drill a little bit of a countersink into the hole that you just made. First thing you need to do is you need to get rid of any protruding items that are coming off the wall, soap dishes, corner shelves, things like that. As you can see in my shower here, I don't have any of those, but you want to remove those beforehand. You also want to inspect any of the tiles, particularly down at the bottom, because that's typically where the most water damage is going to occur. You want to make sure you don't have anything that's real spongy or loose. If you do, it's not a good idea to try and cover it up with Fibo, because there's likely water damage behind the walls. You do a better service to the customer to point that out and say, hey, look, I think we have a problem back here, and let's address that and fix it, and then maybe find an alternate way of getting everything installed. At that point, you might be looking at a full demo, unfortunately, but we want to do right by the customer and give them a nice shower that's going to last for many, many years. So once you've taken everything off the walls that don't need to be there, we want to make sure that we get the surface of the tiles nice and clean, because we're going to be putting a primer over the top of it, and we want to make sure that that primer sticks, because if that primer doesn't stick, our glue's not going to stick, our panels aren't going to stick, and we've got a huge problem. So what I've done here on these walls is I've already cleaned them with acetone. You can use acetone lacquer thinner. Don't use anything that is petroleum based, because the primer itself is water based. You want to make sure you have good adhesion. Use something that's going to evaporate quickly. So acetone or lacquer thinner with proper ventilation and other PPE is important when you're cleaning this, but you want a nice clean surface. You also want the corners, if there's a buildup of excess DAP or any other type of caulking, what have you, you want to clean that out. You want to get this corner nice and straight. You want to do the same thing at the bottom of the base, where there might be an excess buildup of uh, recalkings and things of that nature. You want everything nice and clean when you're ready to get started. So as we mentioned, we want to minimize demo when we're installing Fibo over tile. However, as you can see here on my two ends, I've got some blank space. This is where trim tile would sit. It's a good recommendation to remove the trim tile, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these wood strips and I'm going to put them right here next to the tile, so that I got a place to put a screw in on the end of the installation on both sides. I want my material to be as close to the same thickness as the tile that's already on the wall. So you'll need to figure that out and use the right thickness of material. In this particular shower also, you'll notice up high, I don't have any tile at all. This was a shorter shower, and we decided that we want to take it and we want to bring the Fibo all the way to the ceiling. So we're going to follow the same principle, and we're going to take pre-cut strips of that same stripping material, and we're going to put it up on the top, in the corner, along the side, what have you, and we're going to fill that space in with strips so that we've got a place to apply glue, and also it gives us an opportunity to drive additional screws. Now, if your ceiling your tile rather goes all the way to the ceiling already, you're not able to do that. If you're able to, I would suggest getting rid of your top row of tile and your outside edge of trim tile to give you places to put strips so that you can actually add screws into the installation and give yourself a little bit of extra mechanical fastening that way. To put the strips up, we're going to use Fibo Seal as a glue, and I'm also going to screw it into the wall using H and 5/8 stack screws. I don't know if I'm necessarily going to hit a stud or not, so I want to have glue on this as well to make sure that the strips stick to the wall. Now we have all of our strips up. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and prime the tile and get that ready to accept Fibo. This stuff dries in about 30 minutes, so I will do that. I'm going to go cut my profiles and other things, come back in 30 minutes, and we'll start putting the rest of it together. Now we're ready to apply the primer. I've already got my primer in the pan, and I've got myself a roller. I went ahead and put a drop cloth down to protect my tub or my shower base, make sure I don't get that stuff everywhere. And we'll go ahead and start applying the primer. Now keep in mind that this stuff is pretty expensive. It's like 75 bucks a gallon. You don't need a lot, you just need to get it covered, and you typically only need one coat. So a gallon of this primer, you should be able to do, if I had to guess, probably 15 showers, depending on the size, with one bucket of primer. Okay, so 30 minutes have gone by. My primer's nice and dry. As you can see down here, I've already cut my base profiles and set them on my shims. It is important, just like with any other installation, your base profile needs to be perfectly level, so you need to level it and shim it accordingly. Since we're using anchors and we're using flathead screws, we want to make sure that we've got a slight countersink in our profile so that we can get those screws as flat into the profile as possible. I want to get a minimum of 3 screws in the base profile on my short return wall. If I've got a 5-foot back wall, I want to get 4 screws into that. So you're likely going to have to drill at least 1 hole and countersink it to get that number of screws into your profile evenly spaced out. In this case, as you can see in the profiles, I've got 3 in the bottom of each because I'm only doing a corner shower. So I've got plenty of screw holes there. So for that, I'm just going to go ahead and make some marks because I need to use my masonry bit to drill some holes in the tile so I can put the anchors in. So we'll go ahead and do that now. You'll notice I only did one side just in case it wiggles on me a little bit. I'm only going to set the first base profile. I'll set the second one after the first wall is installed. Okay, holes are marked, and I'm using my 3/16 masonry bit like I showed earlier. I'm going to drill my 3 holes. I'm going to introduce the anchors, set the base profile in place, still putting the bead of sealant on the back of the profile before we stick it to the wall, and then I'll attach that first base profile. It's always a good idea on your mark of your hole to give it a little tap. Try and score the end of that tile so that your bit doesn't travel. And we'll use those screws that I mentioned earlier right into the anchor. And we'll just take one last double check, make sure we're level. And indeed we are, so we're good to go. So I set my first base profile. I'm going to go ahead and put the corner profile in next. This one does not have pre-drilled holes, so I'm going to have to go ahead and put these in, and I'll do a quick demonstration of that. So what you want to know is if you're going a full length corner profile, give me 4 screws. If you're at about 72 inches or below, 3 screws are probably fine, 1 at the bottom, 1 at the top, 1 in the middle. In this case, we're going to do 4, and we're going to follow the same process. I'll pre-drill my holes, I'll mark it with my marker, drill them with the masonry bit, introduce the anchors, and then we'll securely fasten this to the wall. I didn't put anchors in the top 2 screw holes because when I ran my pen through, I found that the tiles, this particular tile didn't go all the way into the corner, so there's a chance that I can run the screw in and get right into the corner and hit wood. And the last thing we'll do is just go ahead and double check, make sure that our corner profile is plumb. We're all good there. So now we're going to go ahead and cut our first panel. One thing to keep in mind, now that we've gotten to this point, all of the parts of the installation are basically the same as everything that you already know. You're going to lay out the same way you're going to lay out for any other shower that you're doing, whether it's tile, whether it's non-tile, whether it's 24-inch panels or the wide 41 and 48-inch panels. At this point in time, it's going to be a repetition of all the same steps you already know. So for this shower, because I'm using an M6030 design and it's just a corner shower, I decided to go ahead and just split my vertical grout line down the middle. So I measured and marked and cut this particular panel. So now I'm going to go ahead and dry fit it. Just like with any other panel, it sets on the base profile. You want to double check and make sure it's plumb. Once you have that set, just like with a glue up over drywall, you're going to want to mark a line on the wall so that you know where to stop your glue. In this case, I'm going to use a marker because I don't want a pencil digging into my tile. So now I have a line for where we're going to apply glue, and then when we get up to the top, I'm just going to use screws. However, I'm going to put glue on my strips above as well. These screws did not countersink themselves since they didn't go into studs, so I'm going to use an extra heavy thickness of glue on the wall to make sure that I've got contact with the back of the panel and the wall all the way through. Okay. For this particular glue up method, it's going to be slightly different than what you're used to when you're gluing up over drywall. Typically, we tell you to get a 1/4 inch bead and run it in an S pattern when we're gluing up over drywall. And we also say that you can use any construction adhesive you're comfortable with when it comes to gluing over drywall, and that is indeed the case. Now that we're doing tile, we want something that's going to be a little bit stickier and a little bit stronger, so we're going to use Fibo Seal as our glue. We don't want to use the liquid nails. It tends to be a little too runny, even the heavy duty, so we're going to use Fibo Seal as our glue. And another thing that we're going to do different is we're going to run our glue line in vertical stripes down the length or the width of the panel rather, and we're going to space them about 6 inches apart. So my panel is 17 inches, so I'm going to get 3 stripes of glue going all the way down the wall, and we want a nice heavy thick bed of glue for this panel to set into. So we'll go ahead and apply that next. Now I've got my glue set. As you can see, I went ahead and ran a little bit of glue on my wood strip as well on the outside edge of the wall, just to have a little bit of extra glue there. It's not necessary because what we're going to do, like we do in a standard installation, is I'm going to face screw into the wood on the outside end to hold that end in place, but a little extra glue to hold it in place is never a bad idea. You are going to go through a lot more Fibo Seal using a 1/2 inch bead and running it vertically this way, so plan accordingly. I would say for every 24-inch panel, you're probably going to use about 3/4 of a tube of Fibo Seal in order to do this. So when you place your order, if you know you're going over tile, make sure you order extra because you don't want to run out in the middle of the job. Now we'll set the panel in place on the base profile just as we dry fit. Set it in the base profile first and then lean it into the wall. And check for vertical plumb. Once you're satisfied with that, push it into the wall the rest of the way. Panel set, and now we're ready to put our face screws in. What I'm also going to do is I'm also going to put screws in the nailing lip on the wood strips that I put up there towards the top of the installation. Again, since I'm extending the height of this, I'm going above the tile and I filled that space in with the wood strips, not only does it give me backer to get me on the same plane as the tile, it also gives me a place to add screws, which is a little more secure than just relying on the glue alone. Glue alone is fine, but whenever I can add screws, I always prefer to add screws. One thing you want to keep in mind is the profile that we're going to use to cover the end. We're going to use the large L profile. So normally we come out 1/4 of an inch into the face of the panel to set our face screws. We only have a 3/8 of an inch leg, so you've got to come really, really darn close to the edge of that panel when you set your screw to make sure that the end of the profile is going to cover it. So in this case, I very strongly recommend pre-drilling your holes before you put your Fibo screws in. So to finish off the ends, we're going to use the large L profile like I mentioned. We've got the 1 inch side and we got the 3/8 inch side. Normally, you're going to put the 3/8 inch side along the edges of the Fibo to cover the Fibo, but we've got backer board, we've got tile, and we've got a Fibo panel, then we've added to the thickness of what's coming off the wall. So the 1 inch side of that's going to cover it. And your profile attaches to the wall just like with any other. We've got our bead of Fibo seal on the inside corner. Also going to run a bit along the outer edge of the 1 inch just to make sure that everything sticks real good. And you can see here that we've covered everything that was on the wall, and then we also covered our screw heads by placing our holes in the right place. Good. Sometimes you may find that the distance from the face of the Fibo to the wall is a little bit less than an inch, and your profile is going to stick out a little bit. If that's the case, you're going to need to get in there with a knife or a multi-tool or something and score the wall so that that profile will tuck back into the corner, because we don't want the end of the profile to be proud of the face of the Fibo. In this case, it actually worked out perfect. It was exactly an inch. Everything was covered. So now you're just going to continue the installation as you would any other installation. We'll start with our next panel that goes into the corner. We'll have a starter panel on this wall, and then we'll finish with our final panel on that wall. Or if it were a 3-sided shower, your back wall's next, and then your right side return wall comes, and then everything finishes and installs just as we showed here and in the original video of how to install Fibo. Thanks again for watching. Appreciate your time. I hope you got something out of this. As always, if you have any questions or any problems, my information is on our website, and you can reach me at tel@fibosystem.com by email. So good luck out there, and we'll see you on the next one.